Nice title, Dallas Jenkins. Nice pun title. Intensity, intensity. Heh. 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 Ha. Heh. Ha.
Oh, beautiful!
You probably shouldn't laugh anymore.
Anyway, Season 3, Episode 6 of The Chosen. In this episode, as if it wasn't obvious enough already in the events of Season 3, tensions are rising as Simon, the Zealot, encounters some of his other Zealot brethren, talking about how Jesus, the promised Messiah, is bringing about peace rather than what they predicted to be a violent revolution against the Romans. Simon the Zealot meets his previous Zealot brethren to tell them that Jesus, the promised Messiah, has actually brought about a peaceful way of reaching out to people rather than a violent revolution against the Romans. In the eyes of Jesus Christ, there's harmony between Jew and Gentile alike, though the Zealots have a hard time letting that sink in after so many years of patriotism. The Pharisees are also getting increasingly more hostile towards the ministry of Jesus Christ, seeing how the Pharisees had been hyper-legalistic for so long, yet here comes this Messiah figure who is bringing peace towards the very people that the Pharisees would have rejected. Tensions rise between Mary and Tamar as they argue for a bit, especially how Mary thinks she had it worse than Tamar did, pondering how Tamar could possibly deserve better treatment than Mary ever had to put up with, only to then realize that Tamar is actually a survivor of war. Much of her family was killed, and the necklace that she wore was actually a token of her previous culture that had been under war for so long. With that revelation, Mary sympathizes and reconciles with Tamar, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. The way I'm pronouncing it sounds like I'm making a news report. Yet the most significant event in this entire episode, oddly enough, you would think it would be Simon countering the other Zealots in the tent city, hence the title Intensity in Tent City. Well, if you excuse my intent. The scene where Jesus is confronting the entire crowd, I think most of them do come from the tent city, Jesus is being met with a question being delivered from his own cousin, John the Baptist. What Jesus says here seems to be the most relevant event in the entire episode, because you have John the Baptist, one of the most brilliant, holiest of men who has ever lived, and yet John the Baptist, of all people, who has known Jesus pretty much his whole life, as far as I'm aware, he has the audacity to doubt if Jesus Christ is indeed the Messiah. This, in terms of the episodic structure of this episode, makes a lot of sense, given how we have a previous scene of the Zealots questioning the motives of the Messiah, and Simon revealing that Jesus is in fact peaceful. You see, a lot of people at that time period were skeptical towards Jesus because there had been some exaggerated rumors circulating around that Jesus would be some kind of revolutionary against the Romans, something like a Marxist of ancient Israel or something like that. Jesus wasn't anything like that. Jesus Christ came to bring people together, not to divide people any further. That's often a mistake that a lot of people nowadays make. They try to cause more barriers when we should be trying to bring people together, even if it's hard. And Jesus is confronted with the question by John the Baptist, is Jesus the Messiah? Of course, this is all laid out in the true events of the scripture, although it's quite interesting how it's laid out in the format of the show. The way the storytelling is paced, and again, these writers who use the scriptures, the true scriptures as their source material, they are very intelligent with the way they write the story. They create a scenario to indicate that Jesus is under pressure from the hostile Pharisees. If Jesus says anything more about claiming to be the Messiah, he's already in trouble, but however he responds, he's going to be in more trouble. So, is he the Messiah? That should be obvious enough. Jesus is doing all these brilliant miracles, and these can be cited and referenced. A lot of people will claim that, oh, Jesus is a sorcerer, or, oh, Jesus can't be the right guy. But if you actually do your research, it's all based on reliable eyewitness accounts, and Jesus's miracles were sourced from God himself, and there was no elaborate spells, no elaborate artifacts or elaborate rituals. It was just Jesus gave a command by the authority of God above, and it was done. And Jesus was doing all this in fulfillment of the Isaiah prophecies. These Isaiah prophecies become very prevalent, especially through season 3, as I've noticed. So Jesus is being confronted with the question, is he the Messiah? And he notes how John the Baptist was the greatest of men, yet even he doubts. It's quite a relatable moment because we all have doubts. All of us are going to go through periods in our lifetime where we question our beliefs and we question if this is true. Now, a lot of people will say that's a healthy thing because it means you're not actively trying to deny something. You're genuinely wanting to find out the truth. That kind of sincerity ought to be rewarded. But at the same time, doubt can be a problem if it's done in a wrong way. But Jesus lovingly answers the question through a logical answer. He recognizes that everybody, including his own cousin, was expecting something else, but Jesus instead, look at the signs, look at what was promised in the Isaiah prophecies. Look, just as the Isaiah prophecies foretold, Jesus is healing the blind with a single command by the authority of God, just as the prophecies foretold, and vice versa by healing the mute and the deaf and casting out demons. And Jesus points this all out as it was written in the scriptures, and the film cuts to these people, different people who had been healed by Jesus as Jesus is saying it. So there's a great parallel and a great justification for those cuts. Cuts can be used in a good way, and good drama. And I don't really know what else there is to say. I guess I could compliment the costumes, the acting, and other things like that. And recently I had seen the finale in the cinema, which caught me by surprise that it was even on. And I was impressed to see that the budget seems to have increased for the season 3 finale. I could mention other aspects of the filmmaking, but at this point, the chosen filmmakers have done such a good job with interpreting these precious ancient scriptures that it's taken quite seriously, and the way that it's being filmed allows people to focus more on what's being said and what's being taught more so than how it's being made. Although, still, the fact that this show is so refreshing in terms of biblical adaptations does make people pay attention to how the story is being told, how it's paced, how it's written, how it's performed, how it's directed, how it's produced, and especially for somewhat of an indie company, that's still quite impressive. They are largely independent, and they've only gained this much popularity just by word of mouth. Let that sink in. Just by word of mouth, and it's already a global phenomenon. So, it just goes to show that whilst the show may have had some support from Hollywood, I don't know, it just goes to show that you don't always need Hollywood in order to succeed. Just as Dallas Jenkins himself, all you need is for God to provide the fish and the loaves, which is quite prevalent in the finale. Dallas has emphasized that the theme of this entire season is Matthew 11:25-30. Come to me, all ye who are weary, and I shall give you rest. So I guess we'll see how that comes into play when I explain the finale. As for the rest of the episode itself, I really don't know if I can add anything more to it. I'm sure there's other people online who could analyze it far better than I could. I guess I'm just giving my take on it because I should have done it right as uploaded, but life's just gotten busy. Scott Smart signing out.